Hey, it's Whips here, and it's time for Miracle Druid to make a return to standard with the new mini set Throne of Tides. Originally, I was going to do something with Battlecry Shaman or Murloc Shaman, but because some of the Battlecry support is actually bugged right now, this was my backup choice, and I'm really excited to actually do this because when I saw a Moonbeam revealed, I couldn't wait to make Miracle Druid a deck again. The main combo in the deck is to use Celestial Alignment to discount all the cards in your hand, so you can put down a Oracle Valoon followed by 2 Guild Traders, thus allowing you to get spell damage on board, where you can just hit your opponent for 9 per hit of Moonbeam, which comes to a total of 32 damage if you have no other way to actually duplicate spell damage, usually finishing off your opponent in 1 turn. Honestly, for a day 1 deck, this felt really nice to actually play. Sure, there are some really bad matchups, but across 25 games, I had a 48% win rate. And with that being said, let's get into the Mulligan guide of the deck. Basically, you're looking for Jerry-Rig Carpenter, Wild Heart Guff, Innervate, Aquatic Form, or Moonlit Guidance to keep in your open hand, and even a Wild Growth is really good to keep there too. If you do have nothing else to do and you see a Guild Trader in your starting hand, you could always keep this just so you can trade it back into the deck and draw something else instead, because you do want to try to get additional copies off of Moonlit Guidance for Guild Trader or the Moonbeams if you possibly can. With that all being said, let's look at some games. Alright, time for a game against Hunter. I do not like seeing both Celestial Alignments right there. We're going to Mulligan both of those away, keeping the Jerry-Rig Carpenter in our opening hand. Getting a Innervate and a Moonbeam. I'd rather have that in our deck, but it is what it is. There's the second Jerry-Rig. Oh shit, it's actually Questline Hunter. That's actually kind of not to be expected. I guess it did get some support in the new set, but it's actually kind of weird to see it. I think the more consistent Hunter deck that you run into now is Big Hunter. And this does mean we do have a problem if, in theory, we don't actually get the Celestial Alignment online before they get their Questline reward. Because if they don't get their Questline reward before we get Celestial Alignment done, then we might just lose. Okay, there's the Nourish. We're going to Quick Shot. That makes sense. We're not going to play too many minions because we just don't have that many minions, so they won't be able to complete their questline super quickly. But in theory, this should allow us to actually get everything done. We're just going to Hero Power, go face. We need 2 turns before we get Celestial Alignment online. Okay, so they're using Aim Shot, and then they're coining something out. Honestly, they're probably just trying to complete at least a step of their questline. Or 2 steps, because they know what's about to happen given the amount of mana we're currently at. Okay, so we're probably just going to want to armor up and then pass the turn back. We could also draw 3 cards if we really feel like it. But let's just use our hero power and pass the turn back. Okay, so we won't be able to deal with that instantly. But by doing this, we prevent them from doing a bunch of damage to us with it on board, since everything is just going to cost 1, so we only take 1 damage per spell they actually cast. Okay, so we still can't deal with it. We can gain a bunch of mana here, though. We're going to want to heal ourselves up a little bit so we don't die. Then we do have a lot of draw power for next turn if we really feel like using any of it. Okay, so our minion is sadly not going to make it through this. I would have really preferred it to actually be able to kill their minion, but oh well. Alright, so let's use Enrich to draw 3 cards, see what we can get. Innovate is nice, Wild Growth is nice, Miracle Growth would have been nice beforehand, but is what it is. We can use Wild Growth to just empty our hand out a little bit. Getting a Moonlit Guidance, a Azure Drake, and the second Miracle Growth. See what we can actually get here. Earthen Scales is actually probably the best thing we could have. That prevents us from dying for another turn. So they kill our minion, which isn't that big of a deal, but There's the Lady Anacondra, which just makes our life a lot easier here. Let's see what we can top deck. The second Celestial Alignment doesn't actually do anything. The Earthen Scales do, though. I'm going to grab the Wild Heart Guff, so we can actually use the hero power twice and gain 2 mana crystals instead of 1. Actually, I guess we would be gaining 4 mana crystals instead of 2, but same difference, right? Now we're back to 10 mana, and we have full combo in our hand right now. Just going to shuffle that in, shuffle the second copy in, and then we can use the Moonlit Guidance to get an additional copy into our hand. Then use our hero power, grabbing the Oracle of the Loon, and then just using the Malagos here. But if we get room, we can Moonbeam them to death. Okay, so they're going to try to kill our minion here, which is perfectly fine. We do want the space. They can't eat through all of our armor in a turn, so there's no chance of us losing from this position. Alright, time for full combo. It's time to trade in our traders for some Moonlit Beams. Alright, time for a game against Warrior. We're going to keep at least one Jury Rig here. We don't really want to keep both of them just because it's not really that necessary. Though we could if we really felt like it. Keeping the aquatic form also. Earthen Scales is decent to see. It depends on which type of warrior this actually is. Malagos is not a good top deck though. We're just going to pass the turn back, and the next turn we're going to put down the Jury Rig. Okay, so they're not Questline Warrior, and we did top deck the Jury Rig that we did mulligan away at the start of this, so that's a little bit frustrating. Well, I guess we can play the second Jury Rig if we really feel like it here. Or we could use the Moonlit Guidance to try to get something else out of the deck. Oh, we can grab the second Moonlit Guidance here. Use Jury Rig, grabbing the second Nourish, then passing the turn back after we attack. Okay, so they're going to coin something out. A weapon, that's perfectly fine. They're just going to draw a card. The only worry about this matchup is the fact that, in theory, they could get enough armor where we can't actually just kill them in one turn. But it really just depends. We're going to use one of the Moonlit Guidance here. The Wild Growth is probably the safer option. The Guild Trader is a lot more funny. And because we shuffled it back into the deck, we have a higher chance of getting it off of a second Moonlit Guidance. Technically, we don't need to have 4 copies, but it's always nice too. Okay, they're just going to armor up a little bit here. There's a second Miracle Growth. We're going to have to use one of the Nourishes mana here. Grabbing the Lady Anacondra, just because that is probably one of the better options out of the deck to grab a second copy of. Now we only need a Celestial Alignment, and then we should be in a really good position. Okay, there's the Moonbeam. We did use both Moonlit Guidances, so it doesn't really matter too much. We need to empty the hand a little bit, which might make it a little bit frustrating once we do use the Celestial Alignment if we get access to it. And if we use anything else here, we're going to just burn, so we're just going to hero power and pass the turn back. We're trying to prevent burning any cards, because if we can get a Celestial Alignment, we should just win the game from that point of view. Though we don't have any type of mana ramp anymore, which will be a little bit annoying to deal with, but we'll get to that point when we get to that point. Okay, so they're just going to attack. We might actually have to choose to burn some cards here too. They're going to armor up a little bit. Okay, a lot of bit. Guild Trader doesn't do us anything necessarily, though it does make the Miracle Growth a lot safer to actually use now. There's the Celestial Alignment, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. Okay, so next turn we have no mana cheat, but we do have a way to... Actually, we do have a lot of mana cheat. We just have no way to actually get our mana back up. But that's perfectly fine if we can use 90% of our hand without even worrying about that. Okay, so we're going to use the Lady Anacondra, use the Innervate just to get it out of our hand, use a Miracle Growth, drawing 3 cards. Wild Growth will cost 0, so we can get 1 more mana here. Then we can use the Earthen Scales to gain a bunch of armor. And then we can either use Malagos, or we could even do the second Miracle Growth here. See what we can get. This will fill us our hand up, and a Wild Heart Guff is exactly what I wanted to see. That's another mana that we have access to. The second Lady Anaconda doesn't really do much in this case. We can do a little bit of face damage to them and then just pass the turn back. I'm perfectly fine if they actually kill the entire board here, because we do need the space. Okay, we do have the second Lady Anaconda, so we could just put it down instantly to get more use out of our spells. Innovate, Wild Growth, use both of those, draw 3 cards. We don't have any more spells in the deck, which is fine. We can put down our dragons here, just so to put Kazakus online. There's a second Celestial Alignment, but we don't necessarily need it. Okay, so they're going to kill our entire board, which is perfectly fine. We do want to try to get some type of spell damage off of Kazakus if we can next turn. Okay, there's the aquatic form. We're going to save the draw power just so we can actually keep it for when we use Kazakus. We might actually want to get another one of the guild traders out of the deck first, but this in theory could just give us enough additional copies, especially because we got the banana split. And all we really need here is a Ancient Reflections. That's exactly what we need. And if we can get one of those the next turn, we should be able to, actually even just this turn, we should be able to fill our board with guild traders and win the game if we drew into it, but we don't. Well, we can use our hero power to gain another mana crystal and then just pass the turn back. And there's the Ancient Reflections at the top of our deck. Okay, so next turn we have an entire board of guild traders and a shit ton of damage in our hand. We're gonna beam our way to victory. There's the guild trader, here's the Ancient Reflections, and then Moonbeam to death. Alrighty, time for a game against Mage. Going to get rid of the Earthen Scales and keep probably everything else here, because that's the only one that actually isn't a good card to keep here. That's actually a pretty good turn 1 play now that we have the guild trader. Just trade it in if we really feel like it. So they have Wildfire, which might mean they're ping Mage. A little bit annoying, but it is what it is. Can just trade in the guild trader, getting the second Innervate. We do have the 2 Jury Rigs just to get the nourishes out of the deck as quickly as humanly possible. They're gonna do 2 damage to our face and pass the turn back. We're gonna play the Jury Rig, grabbing the nourish out of the deck. Okay, so they're Naga Mage. That's a deck that I actually want to cover in the future, but at the same time, there's some other mage decks that I kind of want to do too. I really want to revisit Fire Mage in particular. Okay, so we grab the Wild Heart Guff, because who wouldn't want a second Wild Heart Guff? And we should be able to play it next turn, no matter what. Though there is one problem that this matchup might be. If we use Celestial Alignment, we in theory just give them a bunch of 1-cost cards, which means they gain 2 mana back for every 1-cost card that they play, which might be a little bit frustrating to play against. But at the same time, if they don't have the mana to begin with, they don't get 2 back, so it really just depends. It does make 2 mana go a long way though in this matchup. Okay, so we're going to use the Celestial Alignment because we top decked it. Otherwise, I would probably just allow ourselves to gain a bunch of mana, because we can actually win through the combo with having 20 mana instead of just using Celestial Alignment. But that's an easier way to do it, to be honest. Okay, so we're just going to use a Miracle Growth here. Hopefully we can gain some other mana cheat here, and we do get a Nourish, which is pretty good. Gaining 2 more mana. Use the second Miracle Growth just to see what we can actually get. Alexstrasza is pretty nice as a way just to heal ourselves up a little bit. Okay, so we do have a big wide board, but in theory, because they are mage, they could generate something here that actually prevents us from doing anything. Though we do turn off that Naga that they just played pretty well, because they only have 2 mana to actually work with. Okay, so they actually can kill one of our minions, but we do want the room, so it doesn't really matter too much here. That's the one main issue with this deck, is you end up just losing out on room that you need to make a combo go. We're going to grab the Guild Trader because it's just more funny, or we could even grab the second Guff. Probably should have used our hero power first there, but oh well. I'm going to put down one of the Azure Drakes. There's the Lady Anaconda. This allows us to just free up our hand a bunch here. I'm going to kill the 1/5 and then the 2/5 because I don't want to give them free mana. They might have the second copy in their hand, but who knows? We're just going to play a bunch of cards here and then grab a couple of spells out of the deck. And then use the first scales twice just so to gain a little bit of armor. Pass the turn back probably. Or we could draw a few cards too. Since we shouldn't burn really anything. Trade in one of the traders, grabbing a second copy. Though we probably should have played the Jury Rig just to give us some room in our hand, because we're going to burn that card no matter what now. Okay, so they're going to do a bunch of damage here to our board, I'm assuming. And they actually have the Fire Eye to kill our entire board, but that actually helps us a lot more than it hurts us. And behold, the power of the moon. Alright, now that we're through the games, let's discuss my final thoughts of the deck. So overall, this deck actually performed incredibly well. I expected it to play reasonably well because it is basically Celestial Alignment Druid, but with a new win condition in the form of Moonbeam. And it does serve as a way to just finish off your opponent with something that your opponent isn't actually going to expect, at least this early on in the set. It also is a return to form to one of my favorite decks of all time, Malygos-based decks. Even though Malygos isn't currently in Standard, I love these styles of decks. I know they're not the most fun to play against, but when they go off, they're so fun to actually play yourself. And honestly, I cannot recommend this deck enough. Most of the cards in this deck are just stereotypical Druid cards that you would run anyways, and the only really new card in the entire deck is Moonbeam, and this just allows you to win out games surprisingly well, even against control matchups. Kazakis is in here just as a backup plan because you do natively run 4 other dragons in it. So if it comes up, it comes up. But most games it didn't. You mostly were winning through Moonbeam. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye-bye.